Bedtime.
Good night, Doris.
Thank you. Now go to sleep.
The big banks want to get their hands on your super. And they're putting pressure on our federal politicians to let them in. Banks aren't super. Authorised by D. Whiteley for Industry Super Australia, Melbourne.
And so on to Plenary 4. Is disruption a dirty word? Is what we're being asked to consider. It doesn't really matter because it's as pervasive as oxygen. So we're going to debate game-changing trends.
What we're talking about here is driverless cars or driverless trucks, or even ships, cargo ships with no crews on board, cargo planes with no pilots. All of these things are becoming technically possible, and people are working on all of those things.
In which decade do we think the first driverless car was invented? Oh, smarty pants, how did you know that? So which people got the answer right, Jonathan?
Yes, that's right, the 1980s. There were driverless trucks that drove all the way from one side of America to the other in the 1980s.
When do you get to the point where you have a massive impact on millions of jobs?
Well, it's probably the point where people don't own cars anymore. So one of the big predictions of when we're into this driverless car world is no individuals will own cars. There'll be no point. You will just go out your house, call the car, a car will come, you'll get in it, it'll drop you off. There will be no car ownership. Of course, companies will own cars and supply them into this market of driverless cars doing everything, but us as individuals will have no need. So, there'll be some places where I'm sure there'll be some cities, some countries will sort of, accelerate this. And it might be places like Dubai, and where there's actually a bit more state control. Places like Singapore, it's likely to be sooner there rather than later.
More Australians die from medical misadventure every year than die on the roads. Does that suggest that healthcare, which is your area of specialisation, is ripe for digital disruption, and how might it be disrupted?
Absolutely, absolutely. Healthcare has got to be disruptive. Well, I should say has to be disrupted. We just cannot sustain the way our healthcare system works at the moment. We just can't. We shouldn't be doing temperatures, blood pressures on a regular basis, walking back to the bedside, writing it down on a piece of paper. It just makes no sense. Technology is there just to put a cuff on, leave it, program it. It takes the blood pressure every 5 minutes, sends the information directly to a computer. The computer can monitor it. If there's any problems, it alerts somebody, and a clinician can actually come back and provide clinical care.
Hey, what else are health professionals concerned about except the patient?
Well, I could argue, are they really concerned about the patient? In our public sector, we have a fee-for-service model. It's the only industry I know where somebody actually gets paid for not doing the job correct the first time. So you see a GP, they give you some tablets and say, if this doesn't work, come back next week and we'll try something else. Somebody once said that's called practicing medicine, but maybe not in the right way. But it does disrupt. We have to. Technology just does turn it upside down, and we have to understand that the consumer, as we call them now, not a patient, the consumer is at the centre.
Really, what we're talking about is changing the whole model of primary healthcare, for a start. Can you talk to that?
Sure. When you think about healthcare in the current landscape and environment, I don't think we'll move to a world where the role of the clinician will disappear or disintegrate. I kind of liken it a little bit to an analyst. These guys probably have analysts all in their offices. And at the moment, they're probably getting their analysts spending 3 weeks of the month pulling reports together from various different systems and trying to reconcile those reports and sense checking the numbers and tracking them back and trying to get a single source of a single number. And then off the back of that, they might have 3 or 4 days at the end of the month to try and make a best determination on what they should do on the data that's probably 3.5 weeks old now.
Yeah.
So I think the information problem that Google can help with, and I'll talk a little bit about diabetes, where right now some clever bunny worked out that the teardrops on your eye duct give you the same insulin reading than a little pinprick. So we can now build little microprocessors that can send a little signal to a smart device on your body, or send it to your clinician to say, this is your insulin reading right at that moment. And there's 3.5 million Australians who are diabetic or pre-diabetic, so we're talking a really large problem here. So the role of the clinician in this becomes very, very different.
Suddenly you're not in the business of providing healthcare to sick people, you're in the wellness business.
Absolutely, yeah. And it becomes really, really interesting. With the ageing population, this is going to be a problem not just for developed markets like Australia, but this is really a global problem. There'll be, the average age of an Australian is pushing 90 now. This is really going to flip that whole healthcare model.
So there's a couple of things in the medical area and where robotics and artificial intelligence is starting to impact. So one is in diagnosis. So it's going to be a truth very soon that computers will be much better at diagnosing things than humans.
We've already seen Uber disrupting its own business model. Some of you may have got Uber Eats before. That actually gives the person in the car some sort of function. So they go pick up the food and they bring it to your front door. You might see dry cleaning suddenly happening via Uber. So I think they might not be driving the car in the future, but I think they might still be employed in doing a range of other services.
Industries and trends should funds keep an eye out for in our investment considerations? I've got a list here of the things that you're interested in. Underwater robotics, entertainment, mining, go on.
Yeah,
Stun us.
So mining, of course, there's been a lot of drive for robots in mining for a long period of time, mainly for safety and then for productivity. So, and mining is going to be, with all the stuff we're making on the planet, we're still going to need a lot of mines, particularly metal mines, because we use a lot of metal in all of our technology, right? So that's going to remain a big industry. Car parking, right? Yeah, it's actually a big industry, but there may be no need for car parking in a few decades' time. And I believe that a lot of Australian airports, a huge percentage of their turnover is car parking.
How can technology offset what it causes? Can it?
It's a good question. And whether somebody invents something, if technology causes a problem, do other industries come in with other technology to fix that problem?
Well, if there are no jobs, there's universal basic income. Even lots of amusing robots would be needed to while away the hours.
And there'll be a lot of bored people trying to solve problems, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, all right, a lot of Sudoku.
I feel like there's a lot of problems that need to be solved.
Yes.
And I think this will just help enable us to solve some of those bigger problems. And so new industries will spawn off the back of this.
People probably don't realise, but Amazon is the world's largest robot company. So their entire business model relies on robots. If there are no robots, Amazon is bust. Right? Simple as that. So when Amazon started off, they used a robot company that the robots go in and they pick up the shelves and they move them to humans, and then the humans actually take the things off the shelves. So humans don't go to the shelves come to the humans. They realised that if they didn't buy that robot company pretty quick, if that robot company went away, their business was over, so they just bought the company.
Okay, last thoughts for the super industry to consider. We'll start with you, Jonathan. Last thoughts for the super industry in terms of threats and opportunities.
So I think it's just about, you've got to do some amazing prediction about what industries will disappear, which I know is almost impossible to say, but the car parking is the one I bang on about. I can't see a future in car parking.
Well, that's good news for those of us who've got a car in Sydney Airport being charged a fortune.
I would say don't look around into your industry and judge yourself by that benchmark. Expectations are being set outside of your industry. So think about the best experience you have, whether that's around customer service or insight or whatever it might be. That's your benchmark.
Power shop.
Yeah, Power Shop does do it. Power Shop and Uber, probably.
Yeah.
I think from a super, if you're looking to invest funds into businesses, healthcare, look at the device companies